Welcome. We appreciate you coming to our webinar on the legal implications of small business owners. And today we're here with me, Todd Sivia. I'm the owner of Sivia Law Firm, and Shannon McDonnell. And kind of the reason why the two of us got together to do this one is we also both own businesses outside of practicing law. So we thought, hey, what better way of talking about business and all the things that we've learned over the years than to actually have people that have been practicing this, basically practicing what we preach. So thanks, Shannon, for coming along and joining us today. And appreciate everything. And if you guys have questions throughout this, you're more than welcome to hit the chat button and throw a question out there and ask any kind of questions that you may have for us. And hopefully we'll be able to assist and answer those questions. And depending upon how they're segmenting in, we'll answer them as we go. So Shannon, go ahead and talk about your business.
Okay, so I started my business. It's called Hossmas. It's a made-up name. I always get questions about the name. My dog's name is Hoss, and it's just a made-up term that my husband and I started saying around the Christmas season. And I don't know why that's the name of the products, but it is. I started the line in 2016, but I had been making products all through law school is when I got into it, because I had the ability to have kind of unfettered access to the medical school library and the legal library. So you could kind of look at, I don't know if anybody knows this, but patents are often kind of like recipes. If you're trying to figure out something more about how to do something, especially in the beauty and self-care industry, it's very easy to look at some patents and kind of get a roadmap of where you should be going, I guess is the way to say it. And then you can kind of work from there to go backwards to hone your own experience. So for me, I started it, like I said, in law school. I had some personal skin issues that motivated it. And I lost these 2 teeth when I was in high school, and I had veneers put on many years later. And in law school, it finally occurred to me that I had no money should there be any sort of issues with the veneers. So I had a motivation to keep them in good standing. They are still my original veneers, but that's why I started doing oral care. I just got very worried about my future dental expenses and tried to prevent that as much as possible. And the skincare was also the same line. And in law school, I'm sure that you could agree, you become very tired and you study a lot. So it felt good to do something for myself. Like I said, I did it several years prior to actually establishing the business. In 2016, I established the business, spent about 6 months just focusing on that and building it up. I didn't take out any loans or do anything like that. I did take out a portion of my IRA. So I did take a hit doing that. It was worth it. A tax hit is what I mean to say. But I used that money to establish the business, get branding going, get my materials. And then I just went with it. It wasn't all that complicated. It wasn't all that, high tech by any stretch. But it's been, going on 4 years now? Well, it's over 4 years. And it's been great. So yeah, it's my little side job.
And, with that side job, I mean, you've got, there's positives and negatives with it, trying to work a business and work in a job, trying to work that too. I mean, is there any kind of complications with that? And,
my complications have been more just priorities. I mean, to me, this is not something at this point in my life where I'm trying to be on Target shelves or in Sephora. It's really something that I enjoy doing. I've kept it pretty small scale. I have a good presence in St. Louis area, and that's been really fulfilling for me at this point. I'm also pregnant right now, so and we're in obviously this pandemic, so a lot of my means for sales where I used to go to pop-ups and farmers markets and do that type of stuff, I just don't feel comfortable doing that at this time. A lot of people don't feel comfortable even being in that scenario themselves. So it's been downsized very much. I was lucky to have a lot of things set up, like my online presence and my online store. So that helped a lot during this pandemic. But I think it really is just about priorities. Early on, I was realistic in the sense that, no, this isn't going to be my main source of income, maybe one day, but not right now. And I'm okay with that. So I've been able to keep everything kind of in their own corners. Obviously, my legal practice takes precedence over everything in terms of career goals. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. I was lucky enough to have a portion of time just to focus on getting my side business hospice set up. And I think that that's more than a lot of people could hope for. Obviously so many small business owners, they're doing more than two or three jobs at once, in addition to, having families. And if you want it, you're going to figure it out. If you just need to know, what your priorities are, and you need to, portion your time accordingly. And I think it's really just about time management.
Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right. So a little bit about me. I started Sivia Law in 2006. And then throughout the years, I've kind of added to that with regards to the different LLCs and different things that I've incorporated over the years. For example, Sivia Properties has two commercial properties under management. JPTS, which is another holding company that has one under management. Residential rentals currently have 17 doors in real estate investment speak. And then over the years, I've been inclined to get in and out of businesses. I've started Midwest Title and Escrow, ended up selling that off. Same thing with Midwest Business Institute. They were closely tied to the law firm and had the same goals, and we kind of segmented that off. And then we have kind of a realty company tied in to hold broker's licenses, which is Bridges Home Realty. And I really got into small business itself with my father. My father owned an off supply business. Shannon, you got this kind of the same story.
I think we both. We have many. So my husband has a real estate development company. My father is part owner of Annie's. I think we both come from, and we're drawn to people that are we just have to have our hands in many different things. We get bored easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of our strong suit within our firm is, having people that have lived the life, have seen it from the other side, being the child of a parent that has his fingers in all kinds of different things, and it's a lifestyle of hard work and trying to manage the different things that are going on. Some of the stuff that I've done over the years is pretty easy. You walk in and it's there. And then there's other stuff that takes time, management skill, and has employees and dealing with the day-to-day operations. So with that, which brings us to LLCs and corporations. So Shannon, is your business an LLC or a corporation?
I'm an LLC. I took just enough away from business associations class in law school to know that LLC was what I wanted to set up as. It was very easy. For me personally, I actually used, this was not many, it was 2016. And to save costs at the time, I actually reached out to the WashU for their schooling. I can't think of seminar, part of the business seminar. Some of the students there, they love doing that kind of stuff. And if they're not overburdened and you get hold of them, they're happy to draw up a lot of that paperwork for you. So I'm an LLC registered in the state of Missouri.
Yeah. And I have, if you look at the last slide, I've had both. I've had both LLCs and corporations, and each one of them kind of, for me, utilize different tax codes or different things. For the most part, with the changes in the laws, LLCs have become a little bit more favored, especially through our office. But LLCs provide a lot of flexibility with regards to things. So, but corporations have also, some benefits as well. So, do you have any points you think we need to make on corporations in general or LLCs, or what made you choose one versus the other?
LLC, it was important, obviously, to have something separate from myself as an individual. So a sole proprietorship was something that I wanted to stay away from. Corporation or C Corp, or I think the next slide gets a little bit more into S Corp. It just wasn't appropriate given the style of business that I had and what my short-term and long-term goals were. The point is too, you can always make changes if you need to in the future. Being on my own doing this, I knew that LLC was going to be more manageable for me in terms, especially during tax time and that kind of stuff. So it was just about ease of getting started.
Right. Well, and LLCs over in Missouri are a lot different than the LLCs in Illinois. Was it a $50 fee one time?
Oh man, I don't even remember. I know that it was nothing that I was freaking out about. It had to have been less, which means that to me, in my own benchmarks, even now, if it's over $100, I'm going to kind of roll my eyes a little bit. So it had to have been less than $100. Yeah. All in. I'm talking all in. So business, registration and everything.
Right. But and if you look at some of what I did and why I started incorporation, and we'll talk about the true tax structure of some of mine, but LLCs in the state of Illinois for years, it was $600 just to file, whereas Missouri, it's a little bit better. It's $50.
A little bit better, yeah. And I still lived in Illinois when I first set up at that time too. So so that's just something to consider. They don't have to be necessarily banished.
So choosing the location has an impact. Like corporations, a lot of times you'll see with corporations, it'll be whether it's an LLC or corporation, you get that separate entity from its owners, which is a lot of what you talked about, having something separate. But it also are negatives with C corporations because they have their own income tax based upon their profits, usually a little bit less or a little bit, more substantial in taxes because it's a C corporation versus others. But sole proprietorship does work out well, but it based upon the circumstances. Business structure or business name. How important is the name?
For me, it was very important, especially in the beauty and self-care industry. I personally, I hate a lot of those names. I think they're just so corny. My brand in itself is really, really natural. It's very green. It's very natural. And that kind of was my other problem running into all this, is that in my opinion and experience, green brands typically have even more annoying names, in my opinion. So I really wanted something that was just, off the grid and didn't necessarily make sense, but it would be something you'd remember. And I think that that's true for most businesses. I think that a lot of it, everything, branding and name, that's all stuff that people, they internalize. So that meaning your future customers and yourself too. It's got to be a name you're not going to hate, years down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and if you look at some of mine names, they're very generic because I'm not there to create a trade name or something like that until I start having some kind of category. So like Sivia Law or Midwest Business Institute or Midwest Title and Escrow. There for a while I was on a Midwest kick.
Well, we are in the Midwest. It makes sense. It's a linear thought process.
Yeah. So, but the name was important in that. But trademarks, Amy in our office handles a lot of the trademark issues, and so having that legal protection, not only locally but also federally, is definitely important. What about doing business ads? Do you have any suggestions or discussions all over that?
I don't. That isn't anything that I've run into. No, I haven't. I have had no experience with that, so I shouldn't speak to it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of times you may pick a generic name, but you may have multiple different things underneath it, and it just depends upon the circumstances. The important part, the problem with having all kinds of doing business as names is you've got to keep it registered, keep it protected, and add, a lot of times that'll add cost over the long haul.
I assume it would add some confusion at tax time too, wouldn't it? If you had statements coming in, you're filing expenses, you're doing all these things, but it's not necessarily always in the same consistent name. Right.
So that's always a struggle as well. You picked out a decent name. Domain names, did you have any problems with that?
I did not. Surprisingly, Hosmus was left pretty much alone on the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. I know we struggled with the title company trying to find a name that already had an issue with the domain. So we went through multiple different types and categories and things of that sort just to find a name. Sivia, there's not a lot of Sivias, but there's a whole long story of why that is. My fourth grandfather could not spell Sivia, so I think that's the reason why there aren't that many Sivias around. So, so I think I was okay.
Yeah. That's what's important.
That's important. But there, I have had somebody from Canada register a Sivia name, and I've had to fight with them over misuse or use of their name, or basically the Sivia name. So domain names are important in protecting, anything associated with it, because there's multiple different categories within that domain name that could be impactful. So.
And it's something to consider too early on. If you know you're gonna set up a business, just get it. Just reserve the name, reserve the domain. It's such a small expense. It'll save you a lot of disappointment later, especially when you know that that's your business name and you know that that's what you want to do. Even if you're not going to get it done in 2 or 3 years, it's still such an incremental expense that just go ahead and bring peace of mind to yourself.
Yeah. And and even maybe going as far as going to the trademark, if you got an idea for a name, protecting that right at a federal level, because we're more mobile these days with names. You could be in Illinois one day and decide, oh, Illinois is not the best state for you. You decide to move to California. And once it's registered federally, it's always, then you've got that protection from a longer standpoint too. So, yeah. All right. So you started getting your EIN. How complicated was that when you were going through law school?
Oh, not hard. Not hard. I don't remember anything about, I don't remember any education going to the same in law school. I'll be real honest with you. But I knew whenever I set up the business, I need to get my Missouri number and I need to get my federal ID number. And they were both as simple as just, a few clicks and payment online. Yeah, it was easy.
Yeah.
I still can't, I'll be really honest with you. I don't necessarily, I know that one is necessary for federal reasons. I know that obviously tax reasons too. But I just knew that I needed to have both the state version and the federal version. I didn't really know why. Just know that you need to get both.
Yeah. So, those are the federal tax ID number. I think we charge $39 to do it. It's not extremely difficult to do, but a lot of times you're going to use that EIN to make tax elections, and a lot of times you're making that tax election when you're filing that EIN. So it is a very simple process, but a lot of times when you're making those elections, you're executing that tax. There's tax implications. But you're going to use it quite often. I mean, when we're hiring and paying employees or filing any kind of tax returns or,
dealing with vendors.
Need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, vendors need it. You're in the sales tax arena, so.
So you also need your resale number ID as well, and that's very important. Your certificate. So yeah. You're right. It definitely has implications if it's not done right. I think more than anything, I was lucky. I wouldn't suggest necessarily just blowing through it. But I remember at the time too. I also consulted with my father, who's a small business owner too. So, and my husband, who was at the time finishing up his business degree. So that was helpful. But I wouldn't suggest blowing through it.
You got a question? The question is, how much does a trademark cost? I'll try to get to that at the end. So
I'm glad that you mentioned what trademark really is, which is just like your federal registration of business, which obviously it's comprehensive, because a lot of people, I think they hear trademark and they think it's supposed to be this big important thing, or I'm trying to be the next Silicon Valley individual, and it's not. It's really simple, and it's something that makes sense for even small business owners to take care of.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, C corporations. So, in my practice, I don't think I have done a single C corporation. I have not found it a use for C corporations. My father used to be a C corporation when he had his business, but he incorporated back in the early 1980s, when it was probably useful to be a C corporation. These days, it's not so much. Usually C corporations are only used for like Fortune 500 businesses and things like that, doing something very, very sophisticated, but very few I've honestly not handled a single C corporation, and I push off those as much as possible. They have come back for a resurgence based upon the new tax code, but I don't know how long that will last. So I stay away from C corporations like the plague, like COVID. S corporations is probably a lot of what I prefer a lot of, and I do probably more S corporations than most entities, but that has slightly changed as well, and I'm not as quick to choose an S corporation as I used to, based upon it. It's a now more situational based election, more so than anything else. Do you have any experience with S's or?
I was looking at S Corp versus LLC whenever I first got established, and the S Corp, it just had too many requirements. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
it was really just a matter of what I knew would be tedious to me versus what would be appropriate for the type of business that I was going forward with. It's more paperwork. But they both, an LLC and an S Corp, they both provide, the type of protection of keeping yourself separate from your business, keeping asset, everything that you might be worried about. I felt they both covered the same, information.
Yep, absolutely. The positive with an S corporation is when you're receiving a distribution, you're saving some of the money on self-employment tax. So up to, I believe it's $105,000 approximately in value or that you receive. So if you're receiving payroll check or receiving a if you're a C corporation or an LLC as a sole proprietorship, you have up to about 105 to receive money, and every dollar above that you don't pay self-employment tax. Well, if you're below that dollar amount, if you're receiving money, you have to pay self-employment tax. And self-employment tax is a 15% tax, because as the owner of the company, you got to pay both the employer's side and the employee's side of money. So when you're in that situation, you're going to pay more in taxes. So S corporation allows you to divide that distribution between the two and save some of that self-employment tax. And also with S corporations, it does elevate things, and you're now into a structure, got tax returns, and you become more of a W-2 employee versus a self-employed individual. So if you're applying for something, say a mortgage or whatever, you're going to hand them your W-2. You're not going to hand them your full tax return for the business. So I think that's that's one of the positives with an S corporation is you're just like everybody else, you're W-2 employee. So
except for if you don't want to do that. If you're okay.
Except for if you don't want to do that.
Yeah,
exactly.
To me, it was actually a burden to have to prepare to have to do the tax work to make myself an employee versus just getting through it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not for everyone. So if you got a side hustle, you got something you're working on, it's okay not to have that payroll tax or payroll issues, not have to pay a payroll company to do a payroll tax, or to have that distribution that way. So from my experience, I'm telling you, hey, this is why I did it. But Shannon's absolutely right. I mean, it's not a one size fit all. It's based upon your circumstances. So
yeah.
Thanks, Shannon.
You're welcome.
Business permits, licenses. Have you had any experience with that?
It's tedious and it's pain. It's a pain to go down to
Absolutely.
your city hall and deal with it. So that's my advice. I'll be really honest. I didn't do it. I didn't do it when I was first setting up. I mean, it was like 6 months until I finally just even got over there because it was something that I actually had to be present for. And it's not hard. It's just, it's the same thing as it's the same type of motivation required to go to your local DMV. It's just, it's just not a great day, guys. But it's easy to do. You'll get it done. It's fine. It's not expensive. And nobody's ever going to ask for it, is my experience.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely on the local side. And in a lot of my businesses, I've got to deal with licensing, whether it's for law, real estate, and even locally for real estate investment. You have to register for your business and keep that registration. So if it's state licensing or local licensing, got to be aware of all those different licensing requirements and make sure that you've followed their codes and procedures. So yeah, it's definitely not a fun process.
In that situation too, I think you even saying that, it's very helpful to go to somebody that knows those requirements, because anybody that, I don't know if you experience this too, I think that was the hardest part getting started as an attorney, especially. You feel like you're kind of missing something, that there should be some sort of big checklist or some sort of go-to place. And there wasn't. There just wasn't. And it's so easy to forget little things that you do need to do. And it's not a one size fits all situation. Obviously with you have so many more requirements just in terms of real estate being your industry. So it's important to just assume that everybody else, because they all have been at one time, was just as unaware of what was going on. Reach out to people. You need help with the situation, in my opinion. Most people do.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think, the fact that we all have been through the two of us definitely have gone through this, and Jack as well. We've gone through setting up the business, gone through the process of hiring employees, and gone through, registration requirements and dealing with the local requirements of the different industries. I think that's very helpful to be able to tell you, hey, you're in that type or that category that we need to get you, licensed in this form, or stay away from this area because of licensing requirements. So because it varies from state, not only from state to state, but also municipality to municipality. Because, I'll own real estate in, say, Bethalto or Edwardsville, and I won't have to do certain requirements. But if I own it in Alton or Granite or whatever, there's all kinds of other requirements you have to go through. So
exactly.
Knowing the area, knowing what people need and things like that is important. Business insurance. How big of, the fact that you have an LLC, do you still have insurance?
Yes. You still have insurance. Can't stress that enough.
Absolutely.
You will come in. If you don't, you will come into a situation at some point, guaranteed, in your business experience, where some sort of situation will happen where you will not be able to get business done because you didn't have business insurance. So it's not heinously expensive. It's not one of those things that is going to just freak you out to get done. A lot of times, for me, I run my business out of my home studio. So I was able to tack it on to my home policy, but it is so important to have business insurance. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's all kinds of insurance. I mean, you've got the home-based insurance that you talked about. You've got, errors and omissions, if you're a professional, or malpractice insurance, or if you're in construction, you got that insurance, and then general liability. I mean, all kinds of different claims that may arise. You know, products in the, you know, with products in the stream of commerce, you know, there's issues, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, anytime you're making something and then putting it out into the stream of commerce, like you said, that means you're giving up a lot of control the second it leaves your hands, and you do not know what other people are going to be doing. You need to protect your business. You need to protect yourself. So
Yeah.
it's very important.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, employees.
I have gone through great lengths and probably worked a little harder than I probably should have at times to avoid. And I mean, I hope to one day. It makes me feel awful that I'm not employing people. I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to say that you are putting jobs out there.
Yeah.
I am not at that place yet. I'm not at I'm just not at that place in any
Yeah.
sort of sense. Hope to one day. I will say that when my father and I had our law firm, it was different. It was hard to have employees. It's a lot of work. Like tax time, it's a lot of work. Quarterly, it's a lot of work. Every month, it's a lot of work. So for you to have that done, you know, in the law practice where I work with you now, I can see, you know, it's quite a commitment.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's like herding cats.
I think that's probably a good way of saying it. We try to make your life as easy as possible, but you know, humans are complex, Todd.
They are. They absolutely are. So yeah, you know, just making sure that you've got, you know, your policies in place and you know what's going on with employees, and having performance, knowing what kind of performance you're expecting, and things like that, making it crystal clear is always important. So, you know, just knowing how knowing the back end, what your steps are of when you let an employee go. So, or hire, you know, what is your step process when you're hiring, you know, and making sure that you're avoiding the questions that may get you into trouble. A lot of times people don't even realize some of the questions that they may be asking you think would be a non-issue. But, you know, for example, especially after the recent...
Starting a family. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know, you know, are you going to start a family? Are you going to do, you know, do you have any, you know, even the fact of felonies has been kind of a contentious issue recently. You know, there's new laws with regards to that. So there, you know, knowing the laws, knowing everything that goes along with hiring employees is definitely is important. So got to be careful with hiring people, but got to be ready to your business will not expand without hiring employees. So you just need to make sure you are aware of the steps going forward. So, all right, trademarks, patents. I know Amy in our office handles that quite a bit, but do you have any talks on that?
I don't. I should be. I hope to be more on top of it in the future, because obviously you don't want your ideas to be taken by somebody else, and you also want to protect yourself and make sure that your business is taken care of on a federal level as well as a state and municipal level. From my experience, like I said, patents were very useful for me in terms of getting started, because it was like a roadmap, like I said. So I think that if you're starting a small business, not only if you have an idea that is unique that you do want to protect, patents are a great place. Just looking at patents and patent applications is a great place to kind of figure out what you're doing, I think is a good way of saying it. But
yeah, Absolutely. And trademarks, protect, one of the reasons why I hired Amy in our office was she had this love for trademarks, and knowing that we had somebody in-house that had some kind of love for that part of the business. I mean, it's, there's a lot to it, and, it, there's a lot going on with it. So trademark, there was a question out there about trademarks, and and a lot of the trademarks cost will vary depending upon there's all these different sections of trademark and what is the category that you're trying to trademark. So but I know Amy would be probably a lot better person to answer that question. So I think it's like $200 in cost as a filing fee for trademarks. But we'll definitely have somebody follow up with you guys, the person that asked that question, to give you a little bit more detail on that cost. But I do know that it is very important to have everything solidified for your specific area for trademarks. Class actions and customers. You want to talk about that?
Luckily, I have not had a class action suit filed against hospice. That's a good thing. I think that it's your customer base is very important. You obviously want to treat your customers great. You want to be in an industry that you care about, because otherwise you're not going to be great with customers. It's just, you're not going to care. I do think it's important also, though, that you know your business best. So customers, I don't necessarily agree with the customer is always right type of mentality, because you know your business best and you know what your level of quality is and what you've delivered. So as much as you need to address and be prompt with your customers, and you need to offer superior service or superior product and service, it just depends on what you're doing. I think that you really need to make sure to communicate correctly and communicate efficiently with people, so that you don't end up in a situation that you didn't intend to get yourself into. I think, like you said earlier, that this is a big reason why you protect yourself with business insurance. This is why you hire people that you trust to be, working on behalf of your business, in your business. Customers, everything is out of your control the second that if you are offering legal services, obviously, the second you open your mouth and you utter words to your client, it is out of your control. It's just, you have to be comfortable dealing with people.
Yeah. Well, and two, I mean, there's so many. There's a class action born every minute, and it just depends upon what the circumstances that is a target for this day or that day. I mean, it could be you're collecting, you don't even realize it, but maybe you're collecting certain biometric data, which is a big hot topic in Illinois, where somebody's collecting some, height, weight, whatever, and for whatever reason, it's either been broadcast or something like that, and you fall into a class. You could fall into a class action. Facebook is a perfect example of that. They are a big company, but they had a new piece of technology that was collecting data on face recognition. And because they had that, and the new law kicked in, they settled the lawsuit for $500 million, and for everybody in the state of Illinois. So we never know what's going on, and to keep the distance between you personally and any kind of lawsuits that come through is extremely important. So incorporating or something along those lines is very, very important.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize too, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. The point is that you have to address them, and you have to be of the type of mind that, you're going to deal with those issues head on. You're not going to make a habit of them. And, the issues can be a good lesson in the end. They don't necessarily they shouldn't, end up as a class action type situation, because that means that you did not address something correctly somewhere when you had the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, contracts. Wonderful, wonderful contracts. Do you have any points on this?
A lot of contracts are negotiable. In my world, a lot of contracts that I run into, it's more agreements to sell, or it's these are our terms for you to sell on our platform, or whatever it might be. And it's obviously negotiating this type. In a perfect world, everybody would be cool. Everybody would, have the type of terms that you are hoping you can, agree with, or, that you are hoping somebody would offer you. But you need to make sure to read everything. If you don't know what it is, you need to seek somebody with knowledge to review it on your behalf, so that you don't get yourself into a situation that you can't get out of. And it's important to understand that in most situations, even boilerplate contracts, they can be negotiated. It's just that you need to know don't put yourself in situations that you don't necessarily need to be in. If you don't understand something, get some help. And if something really rubs you the wrong way, it's something probably that's worth addressing and trying to find some sort of resolution that you'll feel more comfortable with.
Yeah. Well, and I always look at it, a person, it used to be a man, a person is as good as their word, the old handshake, we're going to do this together, or whatever. And unfortunately, we're in a world where, there's vagueness. And just because I say I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, there's so much vagueness in what that truly means, and making sure everybody understands what that means is truly why we need a written contract. But we always try to do the handshake, and shake hands and say, this is what we're going to do. If it's not as clear as mud, or, it's important to have something written.
Especially real estate. With your industry too, you know how important that is, because if you don't have all of those little questions filled in, you have to protect yourself. You do, because you can't trust people that would necessarily be who you're contracting with. Their interest is not you. Their best interest is them, and vice versa.
Yeah, a perfect example was last night. I made an offer, did a verbal offer on a piece of real estate, and said, this is the terms, this is what we agreed upon, blah 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 blah. And this morning they said, no, we want this price, even though we agreed upon a different price. So they raised the price by 15 grand. Well, that's not what we agreed to, so that's not agreeable. So luckily we didn't have a written contract. So because we didn't have a written contract, those terms were not solidified. Those terms, especially in the real estate industry, where you have to have it's non-binding if you don't have a written contract. Mm-hmm. So had we had a written contract on that circumstance, we would have been bound. So that wasn't the case, and so the deal walked out the door, so, which is fine. But yeah, contracts are important, to be able to enforce it too. So enforce that deal. So have that been in writing, and then they try to raise the fee, or raise the cost, we wouldn't be in that situation.
No, and your contract is your first line of defense. It really is. If
Yep.
you can have a million legal wrongs going on in your life. It doesn't matter though until you have a decider saying that you are in the right and whoever else is in the wrong. Contracts do away with a lot of that because it's so much easier just to be like, this is my contract. I need you to perform accordingly under the terms of our
Mhm.
contract. That is your first line of defense to keep you from having to escalate a lot of disputes.
Yep. Absolutely. So, all right. So, does anybody have any questions? We covered quite a bit, and hopefully, the information that we were providing as we went along was able to provide you some sense of, why it's important to have LLCs and corporations and all of that. And we'll definitely follow up with person with regards to the cost of trademarks. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask the questions either in chat or pose a question, and we should be able to answer those. So we'll give people a few minutes to ask questions, and you're. Do you really need an exit letter for firing someone in a right to work state, including Missouri? So you never need an exit letter, but it's a good practice.
Good practice if go the extra mile in all of those types of things, because the worst thing that could happen is that somebody's going to file a retaliation claim or something against. And if you have those things in your arsenal already that are just part of your good practices that go above and beyond legal requirements, that shows a lot about you as a business owner, in my opinion. It's a template, it's a template that you could have done. You could pay somebody to do it for you, or you could do it yourself. The cost benefit, analysis of it would really just get it done just for your own good peace of mind and for your business strategy and your business practices.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, knowing expectations, knowing what's going on when somebody's walking out the door, it is important. So, taking that step and is good. So Missouri and Illinois are basically right to, employment at will is the key category, is meaning you can fire for any reason, no reason, and they can leave for any or no reason. So it's just, there's a lot of just good practices. The better you are at practice, practicing good policies, procedures. If you're in the middle of a lawsuit and you can show, hey, here's my letter, here's this document or that document, it's a lot easier to discuss that. So It's a good question.
That is a good question.
Any other questions? Let's see. All right. So if there is a dispute, does 3% have total control of the business? So if it's a 50-50% owner, or a 51-49% owner, can the 49% owner force the 51% owner to do something in a daily operations?
I mean, the overarching issue is whatever the 51% owner is doing, is it in the best interest of the business? Because that would be your underlying reason to force anything. It's typically not as easy as just making somebody do something. If you have to dispute it, you would have to argue that it's not in the best interest of the business, because obviously that is your purpose and those are your actions. As members of an LLC, you have to be working for the best interest of the business. It wouldn't be a very easy, quick thing to make somebody do something though.
Yeah, and I think it depends upon the operating agreement.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, your
and
procedures.
what are the terms? And if there's disagreement, how does your operating agreement follow through? So the question was posed with a standard operating agreement.
Mm-hmm.
It depends. I don't I don't know of any standard operating agreement. Different firms drafted different ways. Getting it from LegalZoom may not be the same as drafting it from an attorney. I think there's lots of different ways to go about it, based upon the circumstances and what was agreed to. So having that contract, having that understanding is important. So if there's and this is kind of maybe a follow-up, if there's a dispute, does a 3% have total control over the business? In some circumstances, they can.
It depends on what the 97% entails, I guess, is
Right.
where I get a little confused. Like what's the 97% makeup that we're dealing with there?
Right. Because there's certain circumstances where you may have a 97% non-voting shares, and 3% controls the whole operation.
Yeah.
So,
and if the 97%, or even if the 97% is split up with a bunch of people that can't get along about anything, then it could be very easy for 3% to be the controlling force. Just depends on the type of business and what your setup is.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah. And I think that's all the questions I've got. Hopefully we answered those last couple. If you need more information, you're more than welcome to send us an email at info@sivialaw.com. If you have trademark questions, you're more welcome to ask Amy. Again, you can still contact her through the info@sivialaw.com. She'll be able to give you a better price quote on what trademark names would be. But generally, the reason why Shannon and I did this webinar is because, we've gone through the issues that business owners have gone through, and we know the struggles, and hopefully this provided you just a little bit more information and of what it's like to own your own company. So we appreciate you being part of this call.
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway. If you have questions, ask. I mean, I'm running into things every year of this business. I mean, it's not unusual for you to really need to ask somebody. Don't feel proud about that. It's every single person from every different corner is always going to be kind of clueless about something at some point. It's normal. So don't try to go it alone. If you can ask anybody, for their advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Shannon, for joining us, and I will look forward to you guys next time.